One question that consistently gets brought up in the PC community is 4x3 really better? Are CRT TVs really better to game on? Well, I'm going to test to see if there's any distinct advantage for 4x3 resolution in today's video. If you're unaware, nowadays modern screens are 16:9 landscape widescreen resolutions, whereas the older full screen is 4:3. Those resolutions usually top off at around 480i, sometimes are very commonly seen at 360p, and the widescreens usually bottom out at 720p. So the question is there any advantage to running 4x3 with some older hardware? Can we save by cutting off the widescreen aspect and driving less graphical prowess in exchange for more frames? Is this even possible, or are we going to crash and burn? So I'm going to run some modern titles here, and I'm going to see if we can actually gain some FPS from a system that is around 2009 to 2013 with modern gaming on full screen 4x3 resolution.
This is like the extra testing grounds. I have a small house, so of course, I have to make the most of every inch I have. As you can see, we got washing machine right here, we got the furnace in the background, and here it is. This is a computer, arguably from 2009 actually. This is a custom built computer. We have the monitor right here, and it's 3x4 monitor. That's what we're going to be using. So I got to actually hit the power button and turn it on. As you can see over here, I have my NES and CRT TV, Sega and CRT TV. But the star of the show today is going to be this. Now, some people have asked, hey, why aren't you using this CRT TV right here, this monitor, or an older CRT TV of some sort? And the thing is when I actually connected it and I actually tried to use that, it didn't display things properly. So like when I was using Steam, it wouldn't display things properly. Like it would cut off sides. And while it was okay for like just playing games in general, when you were trying to use any type of applications, it just wouldn't work. And oh great, I get to play around with Windows settings. I wanted to say forgive the guerrilla recording tactics. This is really like my test area and not my presentation area. This is my presentation area, and because it's the basement, things go around, things happen, dust, debris, things like that. This isn't what I normally work with, so that's why we have some guerrilla recording tactics here. So for simplicity's sake, I have made this look very, very similar to what you would see on like a Windows 98 experience, to the best I can for default settings and things like that without installing modifications and crazy things like that. This computer is just mainly meant to just play some classic games. And so here we go. We've got ourselves our Intel 870. We have 4 cores, 8 logical processors, but this thing is released closer to around 2009, so it's quite ancient architecture, and you can see that the computer is doing pretty decent, a little sluggish overall, but it's okay. We have ourselves our GTX 780, and there you go. It's up and running. It's working. We have I believe it's 8 gigabytes of memory, so not the best, and it's DDR3 of all things, so it's not exactly the most powerful stuff. But I do have an SSD on this, and I do have a bulk hard drive, and that's what we're going to be running. And we're running this off of a Wi-Fi card in my basement with concrete walls, as you can see. Once again, the dungeon. I've set this to high contrast mode and put a lot of things on lower settings so that I can get the most of the games, but Elder Scrolls is going to be set at a pretty high setting, just for the simple fact because it came out almost, what was it? I think it was 12, 13 years ago. Even still, the processor that's running this computer right here is older than Elder Scrolls. So let's see what we can do with it, right? I have everything I have built this system with has come from discarded, recycled parts. Even the controller itself is recycled. I get some of this stuff from Goodwill, the keyboard, the mouse, things like that. Everything has come from a discarded recycled part.
This is Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls Anniversary Edition, so it's not even the original release. It is the anniversary version, and this ran consistently pretty well. There were very, very few stutters and issues outside of what you would normally experience anyways, but I would expect it to run well because this hardware would be very suited to run this during the time that Elder Scrolls actually released. We were seeing a consistent 50 to 60 frames, and I had every setting maxed out on it. Every setting that I personally wanted and enjoyed. So there you go. The graphics card being a GTX 780 should champion this pretty well because around this time, a little bit later, or right around this area when Skyrim was popular, the GTX 980 would have been coming out as well. So the 780 was really, really good, and it's a great card. This is the WindForce variant as well. So it did very, very well to run Skyrim. But again, as I stated before, it should run it well. And the 4:3 resolution wasn't an issue. The text was a little bit strange, and it definitely shows that perhaps the 4:3 resolution was an afterthought rather than a main concern for the developers when they were making this game.
The computer's pretty loud right now. I mean, loud is subjective, but you can sort of hear the CPU and GPU fans spinning up here.
Next up, we have GTA, which is a fan favorite and still one of the most popular games in the world as of today. Most of the settings were set pretty low just so I would be able to get a decent frame rate from this card. Again, we're dealing with a 3 GB card. I turned on anything NVIDIA related, and I kept off anything that didn't apply to us, for example HDR and things like that, and I set most of the presets to pretty low or average or normal, whatever the PC jargon is in these games. I swear they make up their own settings, but I digress. The point is that we were able to maintain around 40 to 60 FPS consistently with decent settings. The game looks fantastic, still runs fantastic. I had no hiccups, no stutters, no serious issues or problems when I was running and playing this game. This is an extremely playable experience, but I have to reiterate what I said with Skyrim. When this game did come out, the 780 was still quite a popular card. The 7 series and the 9 series were the ones that were on top of the world at the time, and so the point being that this game should run well. This game should run pretty decent with this card. But, again, we are running it in 4:3 aspect mode, which this game had no issue running it in. And at the time of the release, when this game came out, widescreen was widely adopted. 16:9 was the standard at this point in time. Not a lot of people were running full screen or 4:3 modes. And so you can see that we're maintaining a pretty decent frame rate here. Again, even with high action, even with explosions happening, even with a lot of stuff going on. I set the view distance, the population density, and things of that nature that would clog up the streets, that would cause a lot of processing issues and things like that. I set those to maximum, so I have an extremely large render distance, a lot of population density, and things of that nature. So this isn't a bad experience. This is definitely better experience than you would experience on the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox 360. Probably a lot similar to the Xbox One version or PlayStation 4. I experienced GTA 5 on both of those systems, both the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, as well as the 360 and the PlayStation 3 and PC, and I have to say that this experience beats out the console experience, even still only having the full screen experience. So if you're interested in playing GTA 5, you could definitely do it on an extremely low spec system and have a great time, but that should be expected yet again. Something that should be noted. As you can see, I'm driving along the road, no stutters, no issues, just having a fun time, causing a little bit of chaos here. And yeah, I personally, if I had no other way to experience this game, only in a 4:3 fashion, I'd be able to play this game. Personally, just as well as if I would be able to play it on a huge screen, a 16 by 9, some ultra wide stuff. It looks good, plays fine, and it's still a fun game to play even today. Someone's going to ask how I got high contrast mode, so all you have to do is go into your theme settings and select high contrast and whatever you like. Next up is Destiny 2, a game that I wanted to test because it's fully online only. Now, this game requires a very steady internet connection, so again, it's really important that we highlight that along with the graphical prowess of these systems, because if you wanted to play this game, you would have to have an extremely steady internet connection. And as I stated before, I'm playing this in the basement on the opposite side of my house, catty corner to where the router is set up. So my router has to push the signal pretty far away to get it to link to this computer. And yet I wasn't kicked a single time. I didn't have any issues with connectivity, no problems being able to play with other people live in game and things like that. So I wanted to test this specifically just for that reason, but also because it is graphically demanding. And so I went over to the graphical settings and I adjusted my resolution to match the TV that I was personally using, which is the Sony flat panel here. But I've also tested this with the other CRT I had aforementioned before, and I wanted to show the times that it takes to load and things like that, because that's also important. This is running off of a bulk hard drive, 7200 RPM, and here's the graphical settings. Again, we're running off that 3 GB card that's almost maxed already, but because we are running this in a 4:3 resolution and not a 4K 1440p or even a 1080p resolution, we are saving on the graphical push, and we're able to run this game pretty easily with this old hardware. Now, this graphics card existed before Destiny 2 was even created, so that in itself is quite the miracle that it is able to process such graphical power and give you a decent looking game. So I'm going to play this game just a little bit and show off how it looks, the ability to navigate through, if it feels fluid or not, and some of the shadows, dark and light, and just the game overall in itself looks really fantastic. Just how it's developed and the beauty of the game itself. The gunplay is fantastic, fun, fast-paced, and it makes for a really good test of the graphical prowess of the system that you're using if you wanted to max all of the settings and just look at the skyboxes. It's a good looking game, that's for sure, but it also has things like deep shadows and lighting that you can test too, so it's really nice for that, if that makes sense. And this game is absolutely no exception with that in mind. We need to also understand that this game was released in 2016, and I believe it was ported to the PC around 2018, 2019, so it's really only been on PC for 5, maybe 6 years at most. That said, the engine is still a little bit older, and it is not something that literally released this year. That said, also, it still gets updated with seasonal content, DLC, expansions, and things of that nature. So it's definitely maintained, and it has a lot to offer in terms of how we're going to push our system and test our system with the beauty of the game itself. I decided to go to several points in the game and just look at different areas to show, and the frames once again champion around 75, which is the refresh rate of the flat panel monitor that I'm using, but it did stay consistently above 40 to 50 frames constantly, if not at 70 to 75, just due to my basic settings that I have enabled. And bearing all of that in mind, you have to understand that this is better than a console experience being around 30 FPS, and you're dealing with a much smaller FOV. Even though this is 4:3, I still believe the FOV is better on PC. So there you go. Moving on to Battlefield 5, and well, I guess we're not going to be playing that game because they're asking me to download and install their launcher and handler, and they want me to sign in, and it's a little strange if you really think about it, because EA has plenty of other games on Steam that doesn't require this. So why are you requiring this of Battlefield? I don't even want to play online. I just want to play solo. I want to play the campaign, and I want to show what a 4x3 resolution can do. So into the trash can you go, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm not going to install that handler. But can it run Crysis? And yes, it can, as long as you don't screw up the resolution. I messed around with the resolutions on this, and instead of backing back out of it like most games do on PC, just in case it screws your monitor up, this one didn't, and I had to do a full restart. But once I had restarted and I set the proper resolution, it worked just fine. Ironically enough, Battlefield 5 wouldn't work, but this, being an EA game, would work. And also, it is the way it's meant to be played. NVIDIA, baby. GTX 780 is championing this bad boy as well. Another game of the time where the 780 would be out and in its heyday. This game hovered around 40 to 60 to 70, 75 frames at any given time, but it liked to stay around the 50s. I could have lowered the settings and got it up to around 54 to 57 at any given time, but keeping the settings at maxed out would end up keeping it around 47 to 57 frames. So it never went down, never went lower than 30. And it really didn't want to stay consistently at a high frame rate, but even when there was action going on, it hovered around 53 to 57 frames. This game's absolutely gorgeous. It's a great game, very fun to play, and it ran fantastic on this old hardware. Honestly, I couldn't be more satisfied. I remember my experience with this game back in the day was with the Xbox 360 version, so it's not exactly the best experience, but I remember how popular this was, and I remember renting it at one point in time and then just buying it because it was such a cool and fun game. And yeah, so I really enjoyed playing this game, and I think it's a fantastic FPS, and it works great on 4x3 resolution. And it seems that the 4x3 resolution probably helped this game quite a bit to maintain these respectable frame rates. I hear what you're saying, big dog. Can it run Doom? Well, of course it can run Doom. Of course it can run. It's any computer from, God, man, 1990, 91, 92 probably can run Doom. So yes, this can run Doom. And the aspect ratio makes it feel like it used to back in the day. So if you have an old CRT monitor, you can play Doom on it, and it'll feel like way back in the day. Again, depending on the version of Doom that you're running, you're going to have to go into the display, you're going to have to configure everything, you're going to have to make sure that it's not going to check the widescreen, and you're going to have to alter the graphics API that you're running, or you're going to have to alter your resolution to conform to the 4x3. Otherwise, you're going to have to play windowed, and much as I like my experiences with Doom windowed, I'd much rather have them full screen. So many of these older Doom settings are still in play, and you can select full screen and 4x3 options, despite widescreen being the typical choice for the modern audience. All that said, you can see that you can expand your FOV, and you can really get the Doom experience here with the 4x3 setting. And here we are. You can grab yourself a chainsaw just like back in the day in Doom 2, and you will be ripping and tearing in no time. This runs Doom flawlessly. Not particularly sure if anybody even thought that it wouldn't run Doom, but yeah, there you go. Ripping apart the demons with the chainsaw. The zombie men are no match. And yeah, there you go. There's Doom. Yes, but what about common everyday tasks? What if I want to watch YouTube, right? What resolutions can I expect from an old PC like this and an old graphics card? Well, I'm happy to report that YouTube starts up quite well, and I have a few add-ons on here to prevent YouTube ads from just spamming my screen. But I tried to render a video in 4K here for you to show you how it processes 4K. And not only did I have some very strange graphical glitches happening just from the video itself, but also a lot of stutter and a lot of problems and issues with 4K. If I dropped it down to 1440p, it was no issue whatsoever, and it played the video just fine. So as long as you're not trying to play 4K with a GTX 780 and an old i7 processor, you should be just fine. As well as the graphical glitches probably have something to do with my add-ons rather than the graphics card itself. But I digress. It works perfectly fine at 1440p, and if you wanted to go even lower than that, you could. But hey, it's Christmas time and I need some Christmas gifts, so let's find one, right? So I'm gonna head on over to eBay. Oh my god, the Donald Trump ornaments are killing me. Wow. And Elon Musk by its side. All right, enough of that. All right, we need. I need to know what's going on in the world. And hey, check that out. I can bring up the news website within seconds. And looks like it's loading perfectly fine as well. So in terms of light browsing, it works just great. And in terms of typing, I know a lot of people would like to see a lot more words and a lot more space for doing work in terms of typing and writing papers, but this does work perfectly fine for a 4x3 monitor. There you go, typing test for you. And also, if you wanted to peruse and buy yourself a new game, you absolutely could, because it does connect to Steam and it works just fine. So what's the actual conclusion to all of this? Well, I bought this monitor for $5 at a Goodwill. Otherwise, it would have been thrown in the dumpster and it would have been destroyed, sitting in a landfill, rotting away. But this monitor has a second lease on life because I decided that I wanted to try something new, something unique and interesting. I hooked it up via VGA connection to a GTX 780 and an old i7 that was released around 2009, an i7 870, I believe. 8 gigabytes of RAM with SSD and a bulk hard drive. This thing is able to be a daily driver if you adjust your expectations. Your settings can be set to low to normal in certain games. Some older games run just perfectly fine on ultra settings, and you can even get some emulation out of it, as it runs perfectly fine with emulators. I don't really feel the need to show a lot of the emulation out of this system, just for the simple fact that if it runs all of these games, you know it's going to run a lot of emulation up to a certain point. I'm not saying this thing's going to be running the PlayStation 3 emulator or the Nintendo Switch one or an Xbox emulator, but it definitely can run a lot of emulators and run them very, very well. So that gives you access to thousands upon thousands of games that you may not have played as a kid either, at resolutions that are very, very similar to the experience that you would have had as a kid. And if you were inclined to go and get a CRT TV and adjust that 4:3 by resolution, you would be able to get the experience that you would get with a lot of these older consoles as a kid and some of these older games. With Steam having access to a lot of PC games from the early to late 90s, you can totally get the experience that you would get back in the day, just with a much snappier PC, one that you don't have to worry about crashing on you continuously over and over again. I think that the 4:3 resolution is something that's very doable, very playable, and for somebody who's going to be sitting at a PC desk with a very short distance from the monitor itself, it seems to work out very, very well. It's helped me to get several extra frames per game, and for some games I'm sure I've gotten 10 to 20 extra frames just for the simple fact that I don't have to drive the extra widescreen potential in the 16:9 format and the higher resolution. So it's definitely made the GTX 780 a viable card to be used even with more modern games. If you guys are interested in seeing more from this setup, you go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you click that subscribe button, because it did take quite a bit of time to put this video together. But other than that, I really appreciate your support on these videos, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, and hope you guys enjoy your gaming.